Hello, today what we're going to do is continue on looking at the different levels. So we've talked about the levels of the atom and how atoms come together to make molecules. Now we're going to look at how molecules come together to make cells. So the topic for today is cells. Now I am working off of the cell biology worksheet, which you can find on your module. And I'll also be referring to the textbook. So when it comes to the module, we're going to start by looking at the general organelles or the general structure of the cell, and then specifically get into individual organelles. And the term organelle is a little organ inside the cell, or it's a specialized compartment in the cell that works together for a unique function. So here's the generic picture of a cell, and the cell has special parts to it. So it's got the nucleus in the middle, the cell membrane on the outside, and then there are various flattened sacs and flattened sacs with dots, and mitochondria, which kind of looks like a peanut. So we'll go through each of those. So now if I jump to the textbook, we'll see that the textbook talks about something called a eukaryote cell. And a eukaryote cell is just a cell that has a nucleus, as opposed to something like bacteria, where the nucleus isn't there. There's no specific nuclear membrane. Everything just floats in the cytoplasm, or the goo. Okay? In the eukaryote cells, there's something called an organelle. And an organelle is a specific structure which performs a specific job. And the organelles we're going to look at are the mitochondria and the cell membrane. Actually, we're going to look through most of them as we go through. As we look through the organelles, the first one we're going to look at is the plasma membrane. Now, the plasma membrane is the outside that holds it all together. It's sometimes called the plasma envelope, sometimes called the cell membrane, and sometimes called the cell envelope. I know, get the terminology together. Anyway, it's very important because it forms a barrier to keep the cytoplasm inside and the outside outside. When we look at it, it is made up of a certain layer of molecules called a phospholipid bilayer. We talked about phospholipids when we were talking about lipids. Phospholipids have this polar end and this non-polar end. And as a result, these tails, these non-polar ends, interact together to make a double layer. If you remember when we were talking about phospholipids, we talked about a hydrophobic end, or hydrophobic in the middle, and the tails are scared of water, so they will interact with each other. And then you have a hydrophilic end on the outside, and they will interact with water. When we're looking at the plasma membrane, there's other molecules we need to consider. One are these yellow molecules inside, and this is cholesterol, a type of steroid. And the cholesterol will help make the, help stiffen the membrane. Then there are these big blue blobs, and the big blue blobs are proteins, which will act as channels or carriers or receptors. Then on the top, there's something called a glycoprotein, and the glycoprotein is a carbohydrate attached to a protein, and they act as, again, a receptor or sort of a flag to help attract the different molecules. When you look at the outside of the plasma membrane, it can have two different structures. One can be a tail or a whip-like tail called a flagella. And usually when you see sperm, the tails are flagella. And then there is a brush-like or hair-like cilia, which moves things in a rowing motion. So the sperm is whip-like and the cilia is rowing-like or wave-like motion. And both will help with motion or moving something over them. The next set of organelles we're going to look at have the prefix cyto in them, and cyto means cell. So cytoplasm is the goo or the colorless solution that fills each cell, and it's controlled by the cell membrane. And then you also have the cytosol. Cytosol is the cytoplasm without the organelles. So cytosol is the living part, and it is composed of mainly water, but it also has fats and sugars and amino acids and dissolved chemicals in it. Good. And then the last cyto word is the cytoskeleton. And the cytoskeleton, similar to the word skeleton, it will provide structure and form, and also provide movement for the cell. So the cell can move outward with it, or it can provide a structure which something can move along it.
Meanwhile, the cell maintains its shape through a cytoskeleton. The cytoskeleton includes the thread-like microfilaments, which are made of protein, and microtubules, which are thin, hollow tubes.
So you'll see here, this is the cytoskeleton, and the cytoskeleton can move out and help the cell to move, because the cytoskeleton will dissolve and reform. It's quite fascinating. Okay, as we continue, we're next going to pop over to 4-6, which talks about organelles. And organelles are specialized structures within the cytoplasm. And we'll look at the nucleus, the mitochondria, the endoplasmic reticulum, Golgi, vesicles, and ribosomes. All of those they have a special structure. So let's first look at a ribosome. And the ribosome is often seen as just a dot. But if they're a dot at microscopic level, because they're so microscopic. But if you go to a higher power, you will see that they look sort of like a hamburger bun. You've got a top bit and then a bottom bit. And the messenger RNA goes in between the hamburger bun and acts as a template or a workbench for the messenger RNA to be read by the ribosome to create proteins. So we say that ribosomes are the site of protein synthesis. And ribosomes can either be found free, or they can be on something called the endoplasmic reticulum, which we will look at later. Now, when we go to the center of the cell is the main part, or the nucleus. And the nucleus is the organelle that holds the genetic material in the inside. And sometimes there's an area called a nucleolus, which is a specialized area inside the nucleus where there is messenger RNA. And that is there to help with the creation of proteins. Okay, so when we look at the nucleus, it's got a nuclear envelope, or sometimes called the nuclear membrane, and then there are holes in between it, or nuclear pores, and the nuclear pores allow the material such as DNA to come, RNA to exit and enter the nucleus and then go back and forth to the cytoplasm. So when we talk about the nucleus is the whole organelle, the nuclear envelope is the outside part, and the nuclear pores are the openings. Good. Next organelle is the mitochondria, and we think of it as the mighty mitochondria. And the mitochondria is the area where the glucose is broken down with the presence of oxygen to ATP, which is the energy molecule that the cell uses. Now, there are specialized membranes on the inside. It's folded and called the cristae, and the fluid inside is called the matrix. This is specialized as it holds the special enzymes which are needed for the breakdown of glucose to ATP, or in the process of cellular respiration. Good. So, the mitochondria is the organelle that makes the cell available. Now, when the cell is creating things, it goes through a whole set of sacs, flattened sacs, which help to create help to transport things across. So, in the nucleus is where the genetic material is. It will be created from RNA. The RNA comes out, will act on a ribosome to get translated, and then that material will be going into the endoplasmic reticulum. It will start, if it's a protein, it starts in the rough endoplasmic reticulum, which is the RER for rough. There we go. The rough endoplasmic reticulum. The rough endoplasmic reticulum is rough because of ribosomes, and it provides the framework for the ribosomes, which make the protein. And then little bits will pinch off and will then migrate and form the Golgi apparatus. So here, this part pinching off is a secretory vesicle, which will then go and join together for the Golgi apparatus. So you have the rough endoplasmic reticulum that has the ribosomes on it, and then there is something called smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Smooth endoplasmic reticulum doesn't have ribosomes, so therefore it is smooth. Also, it has, instead of doing proteins like the rough, the smooth endoplasmic reticulum makes lipids, and it'll store substances, and it will also help with transport. Good. When we are looking at the just a second, the words escape me. Transmembrane communication. You have starts at the nucleus, goes to the rough endoplasmic reticulum, then that will make vesicles which join with the smooth endoplasmic reticulum, and then these specialized vesicles go to what is called the Golgi apparatus. And it's in the Golgi apparatus where there we go. Golgi apparatus. Whoa, what have I done? The Golgi apparatus is where all the vesicles fuse, and then if they're made to exit the cell, they will exit the cell. If not, these special vesicles coming off the Golgi apparatus can go and make specialized lysosomes or specialized vacuoles. Okay, and that is a brief look at the organelles. Make sure you know the names of them all and their functions.